At exactly 6:17 a.m. in the Gulf of Oman, about 53 miles southwest of the Strait of Hormuz, an Iranian Kilo-class submarine named Tarek finished flooding its forward torpedo tubes. 74 meters of Russian-built diesel-electric machinery rested silently about 190 feet beneath the surface. Captain Reza Hosseini believed this was the moment his crew had trained for. The USS Harry S. Truman Carrier Strike Group had entered his patrol zone roughly 2 hours earlier. Somewhere beyond the horizon sat a $13 billion nuclear aircraft carrier, a floating symbol of American naval power. Hosseini's mission was clear: demonstrate capability, show that Iran's submarine fleet could threaten even the most powerful navy on Earth. What he didn't know was that 3 American attack submarines had already been tracking Tarek since the day it left Bandar Abbas 6 days earlier. Every change in course had been recorded. Every turn of the propeller had been logged. Its acoustic fingerprint had already been added to databases used by American submarines across the world. The Iranian crew believed they were the hunters. In reality, they were being studied. The Kilo-class submarine forms the core of Iran's underwater fleet. 3 of these boats were purchased from Russia in the 1990s when oil revenue made such acquisitions possible. Each displaces over 3,000 tons submerged, stretches about 74 meters long, and carries 6 533mm torpedo tubes in the bow. In total, a Kilo can carry 18 torpedoes or lay 24 naval mines. Designed during the Cold War, the diesel-electric propulsion system is quiet enough that Western naval intelligence once nicknamed the class Black Holes. The hull is coated with sound-absorbing tiles, and careful engineering reduces machinery noise. Under ideal conditions, a Kilo can detect another submarine at several times the distance it might itself be detected. That reputation was earned decades ago, long before modern detection technology advanced far beyond what the original design expected to face. About 12 miles to the northeast, another Iranian submarine held position. This one was newer, a Fateh-class boat named Conqueror, an indigenous design introduced in 2019. Smaller than the Kilo at around 600 tons and roughly 48 meters long, it carries 4 torpedo tubes and a more limited weapons load. But the Fateh class represents something strategically important for Iran: domestic progress. It shows that Iranian engineers have begun developing submarines without relying entirely on foreign suppliers. The Conqueror also carried Iran's newer torpedoes, including an oxygen-powered model that Iranian officials claim has advanced countermeasure systems. Whether those claims would hold up against American sonar systems was about to become very clear. At exactly 6:17, Captain Hosseini gave the order. Fire Tube 1. A heavyweight torpedo slipped from the bow tube with barely a sound. The weapon was an SUT torpedo, a German design dating back to the early 1970s but still in service with Iran. The 533mm torpedo accelerated forward, guided by a thin copper wire unspooling behind it. Its speed, about 23 knots. Its target, a ship nearly 18 miles away. Wire guidance allowed the submarine to steer the weapon during its run, but it also meant the submarine itself had to remain almost perfectly still. Sudden maneuvers could snap the delicate guidance wire. In other words, once the torpedo was launched, the submarine had committed to staying right where it was. The Iranian crew had just placed their faith in decades-old technology and hoped it could penetrate one of the most advanced anti-submarine defense networks ever deployed. The American response was immediate, but calm. 47 seconds after the torpedo left the tube, the USS Mississippi, a Virginia-class attack submarine positioned roughly 2,000 yards behind Tarek at a depth of about 400 feet, classified the sound. The launch had created a brief acoustic signature, known as a transient. The submarine's BQQ-10 sonar system captured every detail: the torpedo tube door opening, the pressure equalization, the hydraulic push that sent the weapon into the water. The computer instantly matched the sound profile to known SUT torpedo data stored in reference libraries. Within 90 seconds, the fire control system aboard Mississippi calculated intercept solutions for 2 Mark 48 AD cap torpedoes. Weapons were prepared, safeties were removed, but no launch order came. Instead, a different command arrived. The submarine transmitted a single active sonar ping, short range, maximum power. The effect was immediate. The pulse struck the hull of the Iranian submarine with overwhelming clarity. The sound energy traveled through the steel structure, loud enough that the crew could physically feel it. It was a message, not a threat shouted over radio, not a missile in the water. Just one unmistakable signal. We know exactly where you are. We've been tracking you, and we're close enough to act whenever we decide. In that moment, Captain Hosseini understood the situation. His submarine had been detected long before the attack attempt. Somewhere in the darkness behind him, an American submarine had been observing every move. The decision he faced was no longer tactical. It was simple. Continue the attack and risk losing the submarine within minutes, or abort the mission. To understand how that detection happened, you have to look at the technology behind modern submarine sonar. Virginia-class submarines operate one of the most advanced underwater sensing systems ever built. The BQQ-10 sonar suite combines multiple listening arrays working together. A large bow array detects distant contacts passively. Flank arrays along the sides capture sounds from wide angles. A towed array trails hundreds of feet behind the submarine, listening for low-frequency signals that can travel enormous distances through ocean water. For close-range targeting, high-frequency active sonar provides precise location data. All of this information flows into powerful computers capable of separating useful signals from background noise. The system can distinguish between natural ocean sounds, marine life, distant ships, and the subtle mechanical patterns produced by submarines. In the case of Tarek, the Mississippi had been listening for nearly a week. Every valve adjustment, every pump cycle, even the faint vibrations of routine operations. By the time the Torpedo was launched, the American submarine already knew the target better than its own crew realized. At 6:38, the Iranian submarine surfaced. A diesel submarine rising to the surface is rarely a good sign during an encounter. It signals that the mission has ended. 64 Iranian sailors climbed onto the deck and looked out across a calm ocean. There were no American ships in sight, no aircraft overhead, just empty water and the quiet understanding that somewhere below the surface, unseen submarines were still watching. The launched Torpedo eventually ran out of fuel after about 11 minutes and sank into deep water. Roughly $1.2 million in equipment settling toward the seafloor. 12 miles away, the Fateh-class submarine Conqueror faced a very different response. Another American submarine, the USS Oregon, also a Virginia-class boat, had been tracking it since departure. When the Conqueror prepared its own attack sequence, the Oregon did not use active sonar. Instead, it transmitted a single encrypted acoustic message through the water. Submarine-to-submarine communication underwater is extremely difficult and only possible when the sender already knows the exact location of the receiver. The message contained just a few words. We recommend immediate surface. This is your only warning. The Iranian captain saw the message appear through his sonar system. The transmission included precise coordinates, depth data, and even identified the American submarine sending it, the USS Oregon. Information that should have been impossible to know unless the Americans already had perfect tracking. That alone proved the point. The Conqueror surfaced without launching a weapon. Meanwhile, the USS Harry S. Truman continued on its course exactly as planned. The massive aircraft carrier didn't change direction. It didn't slow down. Not a single adjustment was made. Escorting destroyers held their formation while aircraft continued routine flight operations from the carrier's deck. To anyone watching from the Iranian submarines, the response must have seemed almost dismissive. Two submarines preparing to launch attacks had produced no visible reaction from the carrier strike group at all. That calm indifference carried its own message. You don't scare us. You don't surprise us. You don't even interrupt the schedule. But while the carrier continued its mission, intelligence teams quietly collected enormous amounts of data. Every acoustic signature from both submarines was recorded and cataloged. Torpedo characteristics were logged. Hull vibration patterns captured voices and mechanical activity during the emergency surface. The Kilo-class submarine's true depth limits were demonstrated earlier during its patrol, giving analysts valuable operational data. The Conqueror never launched its oxygen-powered Valor torpedo, but its fire control emissions during targeting were still detected and mapped with precision. In effect, both submarines had revealed their entire technological profile. Imagine sitting at a poker table while trying to bluff and accidentally laying every card face up. For analysts studying submarine warfare, that kind of information is priceless. If the situation had escalated, the weapon likely used against the Iranian submarines would have been the Mark 48 AD cap torpedo. This heavyweight torpedo measures about 21 inches in diameter and weighs roughly 3,500 pounds. It carries a warhead of approximately 650 pounds of high explosive designed specifically for underwater targets. Its propulsion system uses a specialized fuel that powers a pump jet engine, allowing the torpedo to travel at extremely high speeds while remaining relatively quiet. Official specifications list speeds above 28 knots and ranges over 50,000 yards, though many analysts believe the actual performance is significantly greater. The weapon can operate at extreme depths and travel long distances while maintaining guidance. The Mark 48 combines wire guidance with advanced acoustic homing. During the early part of its run, it can be guided by the launching submarine. Once closer to the target, its onboard sensors take over, tracking the sound signature of the enemy vessel. If it misses, the torpedo can automatically search and attempt another attack. Its processing systems are designed to ignore decoys and focus on real targets. Rather than striking the side of a ship, the weapon typically detonates beneath the hull. The explosion creates a massive void in the water, causing the vessel above it to lose support and break apart from structural stress. Had the order been given that morning, 2 torpedoes could have been launched almost instantly. 2 weapons, 2 targets. The entire encounter could have ended in moments. But that command never came. Looking at the situation purely from a financial perspective tells a striking story. Iran's operation involved 2 submarines deployed for several days, consuming fuel, crew hours, and maintenance resources. The estimated operational cost approached several $million. On top of that, one SUT torpedo, valued at more than $1 million, was launched without achieving any result. By the end of the encounter, the total cost of the operation had climbed dramatically, yet none of its intended objectives were achieved. The American side used something far simpler: one active sonar pulse from the USS Mississippi, one encrypted underwater message from the USS Oregon. No torpedoes launched, no weapons expended, no lives at risk. 3 Virginia-class submarines operating on routine patrol schedules neutralized 2 hostile submarines using nothing but superior detection and information control. Even more important than the financial comparison is the strategic reasoning behind what happened next. Destroying the submarines might have been technically easy, but doing so would have created an international crisis. Over 100 sailors could have been lost, triggering diplomatic fallout and political complications across multiple countries. It also would have provided exactly what struggling governments often seek in tense situations: a dramatic confrontation that could be used for political messaging. Instead, the Americans allowed both submarines to surface and withdraw. The result was far quieter, but far more effective. Iran's submarine force had just revealed its operational limits in front of some of the most advanced surveillance systems in the world. Its capabilities were studied, measured, and stored for future reference, and the message delivered beneath the waves carried well beyond that single encounter. Modern naval power isn't just about ships, missiles, or torpedoes. It's about who controls the information, who detects first, who understands the battlefield faster, and who can act before the other side even realizes what's happening. In underwater warfare, the side that sees first usually wins. And sometimes the most powerful demonstration is the one where no weapons are fired at all. Back in Tehran, commanders within the Revolutionary Guard Navy faced some difficult conclusions during closed-door briefings. Much of their submarine doctrine had been built on ideas formed decades earlier. The belief that their boats could remain undetected near busy shipping lanes. The assumption that geography alone provided protection. The expectation that older torpedo technology could still threaten modern fleets. But the encounter in the Gulf of Oman challenged all of those assumptions. Their submarines weren't invisible, their weapons weren't unstoppable, and coastal waters weren't the safe hiding places many planners once believed. In modern naval operations, control of the environment often comes down to control of information. Detection networks, sonar systems, satellites, and decades of oceanographic mapping have transformed how navies operate beneath the surface. The Gulf of Oman and the Strait of Hormuz are among the most monitored waterways on Earth. For decades, powerful navies have invested enormous resources into understanding these waters, tracking sound patterns, mapping seabeds, and refining detection systems that can identify even subtle underwater activity. While the Iranian submarines returned to port, the USS Harry S. Truman Carrier Strike Group simply continued its patrol. From the perspective of the American formation, nothing had changed. Aircraft continued flying scheduled missions. Destroyers maintained their patrol spacing. The carrier remained on course. Operations moved forward exactly as planned. Meanwhile, Iranian state media released statements describing the submarine activity as routine training exercises conducted in international waters. For domestic audiences, the story focused on readiness and capability, but the navigation logs aboard the carrier told a quieter story. Throughout the entire encounter, there were no course corrections, no sudden speed adjustments, A carrier group valued in the tens of billions of dollars had sailed steadily through waters where two submarines had attempted to demonstrate their presence. Moments like that reveal something important about how deterrence often works in modern naval operations. Most of the time, it doesn't involve dramatic confrontations. There are no explosions or public announcements. Instead, messages are delivered quietly, through sonar signals, surveillance systems, and the simple fact that one side clearly understands the situation before the other does. The Iranian submarines had hoped to create a dramatic moment, something resembling a David versus Goliath challenge. What they encountered instead was a demonstration of technological and operational advantage built over decades. When submarines rely on designs from earlier generations, when weapon systems depend on older guidance methods, and when sonar technology struggles to detect modern propulsion systems, the balance becomes difficult to overcome, especially in waters that have been carefully mapped and monitored for decades. Underwater operations reward preparation, patience, and precise information. Optimism alone doesn't change the physics of sound traveling through the ocean. The crews of the Tariq and Conqueror returned home safely. Somewhere in Bandar Abbas, sailors who had experienced that encounter likely told their families they had completed another patrol and were glad to be back on land. And that outcome was possible because the situation never escalated beyond signals and warnings. Modern naval power includes something that often goes unnoticed: the ability to demonstrate overwhelming capability without using it. Sometimes the most effective outcome is the one where no weapons are fired, no ships are lost, and both sides quietly move on. Professionals in the field understand those signals clearly. Victory in such moments isn't measured by destruction. It's measured by the fact that conflict never happens. If you found this breakdown interesting, consider subscribing and sharing the video. Your support helps bring more little-known stories of modern maritime and military operations to light.